Hey, hey, hey. Hello, beautiful beauties. How are you all doing this evening? I'm just making sure that the connection is okay. We seem to have some issues when I just started. Um, Blessings finds you all enjoying a most wonderful now. It's Rev Roni Lipstein here with you from Sanctuary Soul Sanctuary. And thank you so very much for tuning in and tuning in. So I wanted to touch base this evening, and we'll see what comes through on a concept with respect to what I call the intricately interwoven web of we. And basically, this is a video for those who are on a pathway of consciousness expansion, which pretty much is everybody. But some of us are doing it consciously, and some of us are riding the wave. So this is probably for those who are doing so more consciously. Those who are riding the wave are coming into conscious awareness in such a natural manner, and when they're coming in, things are so well in place already that it's almost lost that it's actually happening, but it is. I'm seeing that there is something happening. Namaste, Shri David. Oh my gosh, this is so cool that you're here with me. Yay, good timing. So there are many stages and levels and degrees of conscious awareness, infinite, in fact, and it's continuously spiraling. Like we've all heard of, well, not all of us, but a lot of us have heard of the fractal nature of existence, and how, you can look at my hand and then fractally my hand is there like infinitum, going smaller and smaller and smaller, infinitesimally, and yet always there to some degree of existence. The same can be said for consciousness. So I'm going to share a little bit about my own personal experiences with my pathway of enlightenment and consciousness. And hopefully that will provide some assistance for those who are walking the pathway, coming up into it, and journeying through it. So back in the day, it actually wasn't too long ago. I've been journeying this pathway of mine consciously for about 30 years now. So in retrospect to that, I would say in the last like 15-ish years, I came into a greater awareness of the whole idea of the mirroring effect, and how when we meet someone else, they're representing a mirror to us, and within them, whatever it is that we are seeing, there is a lesson for us to learn. And with the conscious awareness that came from that was some confusion. And I guess that's what we're touching on here today. I'm hoping to break through some of the confusion that can come up for people so that your journey is a lot easier. I think that's part of the reason that those of us who go through what we go through, and then wind up being the teachers thereof, are to make it easier for everyone. Otherwise, why is it so hard? It's not so hard. I mean, it feels like it, but anyways, moving on, we want to make it easy. So one of the confusions with the mirroring thing is that people start to get confused when they're seeing something that's horrendous in someone and they're noticing it, and all of a sudden there's, because we're going on sound bites that we're seeing now since the advent of the internet, there's a lot more information that's being shot at us, but our attention spans have gotten much smaller because we're being rushed continuously to try and just surmount so much more on top of what it is that we're doing already, on top of what it is that we're being. that we've left very little room. So when we are receiving information through the internet, for example, where it's in these little sound bites, everyone is your mirror. Well, what the hell does that mean? If I'm looking at somebody who's a mass murderer and I'm feeling empathy towards them and I can understand how it is that they got to where they got to, does that mean I'm a mass murderer? Or could it be something else? Which, of course, it is something else. I'm not a mass murderer. But it's very easy to get confused with respect to what it is that we're seeing when we are going on these very, very small sound bites that we are receiving through the internet. So with the mirroring, for example, when somebody comes into conscious awareness of the mirroring effect and what the gifts of awareness that lie therein are, the confusion that sets in is based upon fear. And the fears that arise are arising because they are opportunities for our growth. They are opportunities for us to look at aspects of self that we might not be feeling as wonderful about, that we're not loving, and that are asking to be loved. Hence the fear arises. But it can be very overwhelming and disconcerting and for some discombobulating. So it's important when we are playing around with new concepts regarding consciousness that we're not just going based upon sound bites. And if we're going to dive into something, that we actually take the time, quote unquote, because there really is none, but anyways, in this world there is. So we take the time and put in the energy to actually understand what it is that we're delving into. So with mirroring, as I just said, for example, if I was looking at somebody and identifying them with them and they're a mass murderer, which I don't identify with within myself, then what is it that I might be seeing? So I need to ask that question from the perspective of love. So, okay, what is it that you are seeing, and how is whatever it is that you are seeing going to make you feel better about yourself? What is it going to teach you about yourself? So for me, for example, if I'm seeing someone that I'm identifying with who is a mass murderer, what I am seeing within myself is my enormous amount of empathy, is my ability to see past acts of violence and insecurity and tragedies and soul shocks to the person behind those actions and how and why it is that they are taking those actions, and be able to send forth blessings of love's grace to them, because that's my role here on this planet. So it's not me showing me the mass murderer in myself necessarily, but then on another level it is, because the mass murderer wouldn't exist. Whew, sorry about that, loves. If within, yes, I know it's a big one, right? It's very hard for most of us to accept these things, but it is what it is. And the mass murderers would not exist, the rapists, the killers, the this, the that, if within us there wasn't that anger, those tragedies, those shocks that might exist on the most minuscule of levels, but even though they are on a level that we would never even act upon, let alone consciously even ponder, they're there. And so if you're seeing something and you're identifying with it like a mass murderer, it's really an opportunity for you to do something like the Ho'oponopono blissing, in which we take on responsibility for our brother or sister's actions, knowing that we are all one, and therefore own that part within us that has the ability to take such actions and provide love to that part within us on behalf of this individual and therefore to them. So that was something that was, as I said, about 10 to 15 years ago for me, and it wasn't quite as confounding in the confusion that it stirred within me as what I recently experienced. But of course, nothing is ever as confounding as when you're going through it or when you've most recently been in it. I'm sure if I spoke to you about this 15 years ago when I was going through it, I may have felt it much more confusing at the time. and felt so wonderful that I had figured it all out, as I'm about to speak with you now about the interconnectedness of we. So one of the other things as we begin to expand our conscious awareness that occurs is that we understand, and it's really, it's one of the most awe-inspiring revelations that, and again, I've had the experience of this on innumerable circumstances, situations, but each time it's a little bit different, and it's a little bit deeper, and it's a little bit fuller, and there's a little bit more for us to be able to sink our teeth into, if you will. So whilst understanding that we are all one, for more than 30 years now, and understanding that we are all connected, and understanding that everything is connected to everything else, there is a level of understanding. Again, it's always deepening, always. Infinite is the enlightenment that is available to any of us, and on any one thing, the depths and heights to which we may go to regarding that enlightenment and expansion of consciousness. So with respect to the interconnectedness of we, I had this dawning revelation, and it kind of kicked off the rest of my spring and summer months into the insanity of enlightenment, which, by the way, to explain the statement enlightenment is insanity is to understand that we live in a world that for the last several thousands of years has been teaching us what it is to be normal and sane, which unfortunately is actually not sane. It's insanity. But because we are taught what is normal and sane is what is normal and sane, then therefore enlightenment becomes insanity, because it is neither that which we have been taught is normal or sane. Welcome to Crazy Town, everybody. So, yes, back to the interconnectedness of we. So the dawning revelation that I had is that I was walking down the street, and I wound up coming upon a specific street corner by chance that I had there was a sign there that I had been admiring for some time, but I was walking without direction. I was just going through the motions, as it were, and I wound up there. And in that moment, I saw the sign, and then I was about to cross the street, but a car was coming by, and then I saw that there was someone else that was able to cross going this way. I was going that way. And all of a sudden, I realized that everything in that moment was exactly the way it was in that moment, with purpose. And it was all interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent upon each other to exist. That car would not have been going by there at that moment had I not been there, and the other person had been there in the store with the sign that was built, who knows, like 100 years ago. And it just all of a sudden was spiraling into the infinity that is we, and the understanding of just how intricately interconnected and interwoven is this web, which is very overwhelming in and of itself. But that was a glorious moment of awe, and I was just completely taken by the majesty of existence itself. And so that was a completely love-filled moment that unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how one looks at it, spiraled from there for the next 5 months, in which I started to see the connections of things to much greater depths, and which was glorious most of the time. But sometimes when I wasn't just seeing it, because you see what happens is you get excited and you start going looking for it. So once you're looking for it, it's a different you that's come in to play. And that you has very close connections and ties to fear, because that's the you that is more closely associated to this physically incarnated experience, which unfortunately, as I began with, was saying that, you know, we have been imbued with the teachings of fear consciousness for thousands upon thousands of years. So when I started, because my mind got so excited, oh my gosh, I'm seeing all these connections, I'm seeing the deeper meanings, it's so exciting. I started going looking and, oh, I can see this and this is connected to that and that. And not just that, but also seeing how I was seeing and living by these connections beforehand. It's part of my guidance. And all of a sudden realizing that I'm receiving channeled wisdom even more so than I realized before. And oh my gosh, the revelations were great, except when I started looking and seeing things, and I started seeing through fear's eyes. And so I was seeing connections, and the meaning of the connections that I was seeing started showing me things about me that I didn't like. But things that were so minuscule in their existence. Like, I would see somebody would say something to somebody else, and I'd be watching that, and I'd realize that there was a message in there for me, except that the message that I was interpreting was there for me was one of judgment. And love never comes through fear. The two do not coexist in one's consciousness simultaneously. So I would be seeing two people that were having some kind of an interaction, and I would be part of it. But whatever was being spoken to in that moment, there was this fear voice in me that was saying, oh, this is all because you had that negative thought about, you know, not liking how hot the day was. And now they're showing you what a horrible thing that was, that you were thinking that, and you're being judged, and you are being seen in ways that, you know, all of your negatives are being seen. And suddenly I just wanted to run away and hide. And this majesty of our interconnectedness became a horrific terror for me. And leaving my house, even staying in my house, actually, seeing connections when coming from this place of fear became just, it was horrifying. And I just didn't want to have the experience. And yet at the same time, I desperately wanted to have the experience, because I knew that on the flip side of the fear was the love. And within that love was just love. There was acceptance and embracing and so much understanding and compassion, even for the parts of me that one might judge as being less than or not enough. Were not seen as that. They were seen the way a mother would embrace their child, knowing that, you know, if your child is crying hysterically because somebody said something mean to them, you don't brandish them for feeling bad about themselves because they're believing in what somebody said to them. You explain to them that what someone said to them is untrue and that they shouldn't believe it. And you don't brandish them for not loving themselves. You help them to see the love within themselves. But when you're coming from fear, all that's happening is brandishing. All that's happening is fingers pointing and putting self down and utilizing any and all cues and stimuli that are available to use against you. When in truth, any of the things that you're actually feeling in any way, shape, or form, guilty, remorse, or bad in any way at all for, are just opportunities to actually love yourself more and to have greater understanding for why those parts of you exist. Because even if we've done something that one could say is horribly wrong. And we can go back to our mass murderer now. Because really the things that I was upset with myself were not, you would all laugh at me. So not in a bad way, in like a loving, oh, Ron, you're being so silly way. But back to the mass murderer. So how can you possibly see that as a positive? On a soul level, the mass murderer exists. And again, everybody take a deep breath. Hopefully my phone won't fall this time. Because within all of us is that ability that we are not acknowledging and embracing and loving. Within all of us are soul shocks, tragedies that we have experienced in our lives that are still healing, that are still wounded. And the mass murderer is like taking the little itty bitty tiny boo-boos in all of us, and there's 8 billion of us plus so many millions before us, shoving them all together and shoving them into one person. And that one person becomes an example to all of we of something that would not be if we were being love. And so their soul has chosen to sacrifice themselves to be this individual who you can guarantee is living a tortured life, to be living inside of a mind that wants to torture, maim, or otherwise kill, disrespect the gift and the miracle that is life. One can imagine how torturous that must be, that you would be compelled to go to that level of action, right? And so if that is being shown, it's being shown so that there can be a compassion that's given to the individual. It is being shown so that there is an understanding that can be provided so that we can transcend the fear, so that we aren't breeding murderers anymore. And the same goes for us and our silly billy little fears and guilts and what have you, you know, thinking that having a judgmental thought about somebody's fashion sense, or music sense, or a white lie that we may have told to make somebody feel better when, you know, but it was a lie. And the interconnectedness that I was seeing, and when these things would come up and it was like, oh, you know, you lied and that's a horrible thing. And I started the spiral that I started to go on because I was coming through fear was unnecessary. Had I known in advance, and this is my journey, this is part of my personal legend, my purpose for being here on this planet, is that I wind up going through these things unbeknownst to me until I'm in them, and once I'm in them, I'm in them, so that I can be here now afterwards to share with everybody, so that you don't have to go it alone. And that if you do, that there's a little bit more consciousness with respect to the journey. That when you're seeing that, yes, there is meaning in everything. And in everything, there is a message just for you. Everything. And what the meaning and what the message are, infinite are the interpretations. Infinite is the understanding. Infinite are the meanings available for us to choose. That's number one. Number one. There is nobody here that can tell you what something means to you but you. They might assist you, they might infer, they might suggest, but ultimately it is you who is going to hold whatever meaning that you attribute to any one given thing. Okay? Number one. Number two, because there's nobody that can actually say 100,000% for sure what something means, that means that we get to choose. Okay? So, infinite are the meanings. We get to choose. There is meaning in everything. There is a message in everything for you. And if we are the ones who get to choose, then we get to choose what makes us feel good. I'm going to say that again. Even if you are being shown something that shows you something about you where there is room, opportunity for growth, you can choose to see that lovingly. You can choose to see the message being gifted to you lovingly. You can choose to see all of it through love. So, for example, where I was admonishing myself for telling a white lie, I could have said to myself, Ron, it was really cool that you did that you made that choice to tell a white lie. I know it's not in your character normally, but there was absolutely no reason for that person to know anything other than what you told them, because they walked away feeling amazing. And now they're going to take actions based upon that amazing feeling that are going to create even more amazingness, not just for themselves, but for everybody else. And by the way, who's to say that it was a lie anyways? How do we know for sure 100%? So that's one interpretation. My first interpretation was, you horrible person, you're telling a lie. Both of them are true in the fact that I'm not a horrible person, but I was telling a lie, but it was actually a nice thing that I was doing. Which one do I want to focus on? How do I want to place my focus? What interpretation do I want to give? When I'm looking at anything and I'm seeing connections that are happening and messages that are being given, through whose eyes am I looking? Fear or love? When I'm interpreting anything, receiving a message, is it through fear's voice that I receive or love's? Because love does not tell me I'm a horrible person. It doesn't tell me that killing somebody is a good thing, necessarily. It does show me how it serves its purpose. It does show me where there's opportunity for growth, but it does so through love and understanding and compassion. It's not blind. It's not weak. It's not a pushover. It doesn't excuse negative or horrible behaviors. It seeks to embrace and transcend them. Very different. So how we choose to experience life is of our making. So as we begin to see more, it's important that we do all that we can to align ourselves with love. And if we can't, to get somebody who is going to be the anchor for us that we can hold on to when we go in to these things. Or if we're finding ourselves in them, that we find someone that we can go to ask for assistance, for guidance and clarity. Because the gift of consciousness is not to break you into a million pieces. It is to put you back together again and allow the light of love to flow through and allow the fears to dissipate. So there is much more that can be said on the subject, and I will most certainly be sharing much more as the inspiration flows through me. I went through a 5-month journey that is starting now to ground itself, as I've been doing a couple of videos of late, as it's time. So as it flows, I will share more. But for the now, I just would like to again reiterate all that one can do to choose to see and hear and smell and taste and touch, experience, interpret, attribute meaning to, through love, through namaste love. That is the greatest gift that we can give, both to self, but also to everyone else. Because when we feel good, we are healthier. And when we feel good and we're healthier, there is more of us, and more of us that's in a really good place to give more of that goodness to others. And so by virtue of loving self, by virtue of choosing love, we do so on behalf of everyone who is in our life and everyone who is in their lives, and so on ad infinitum. I know there's a lot of infinity, huh? Woo! So, until next time, sweet, beautiful Earth Angels Divine, thank you so very much for joining me here. And for those who are seeking someone with whom to walk through this wonderful consciousness expansion that we are all journeying upon in this now, I am available for one-on-one guidance as well as community and group mediated, facilitated gatherings, circles, play shops, and all that jazz. So get in touch with me if you would like to, either through my website, rhondasherylipstein.com, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, or you can call. And all of my information is available on whichever site you happen to be watching this on. So until then, Blissedly Be in Lakesha Lakin. Namaste. Mwah! Bliss kiss for you all.